Pandemonium Reigns podcast. What is up? It's your boy Mike. Flying solo today. Just going to drop some thoughts and some opinion on you leading up to the orange and white game. Flying solo today will not be flying solo on Saturday when Dan and I will be in Neyland Stadium. Um, First time in 6 months to the day. I wonder when spring practice was being planned out if Danny White and Josh Heupel were like, hey, let's have the orange and white game on the 6 month anniversary of Tennessee beating Alabama. I just wonder because they are some would say maybe the petty kings. They roll like that. I read an article or a headline this week that said there are reminders everywhere about the win over Alabama, and Saturday will be just another. Even if there weren't reminders everywhere, we would remember it because again, it's 6 months to the day. How much fun that was! It's going to be a great feeling to be in Neyland. Oh my gosh, woo! For the first time in 6 months with my boy, when your team is coming off of 11 wins for the first time in more than half of my lifetime in so long, our best season in so long. It's gonna be great. The vibes will be immaculate. Weather's looking nice, man. The competition from these youngsters and the guys returning just looks super nice. So just want to talk about that a little bit. Um, Again, apologies for flying solo. Off season's just been so busy for us. That saying that Josh Pate has no off season feels on point because Dan and I just it is so hard to find the time. That's why we've been coming at you solo just to stay in touch and just to drop our thoughts on some things, and that's what I'm going to do. So just again kicking off into the spring game Saturday, man. If you are tuned in, if you're plugged in to your 247s and your outlets that cover Tennessee, of which there are so many, you're hearing about guys at positions, running backs, certainly receivers, man, defensive guys. You know that Rodney Garner's on these defensive front guys, these defensive linemen and these edge guys, these Leos and all of them. Man, he's on them, and I am so excited. Even though it's a glorified scrimmage, just a fan practice where nobody's going to put too much out there that the eyes in the sky are going to see or anything like that. Everybody operates that way. It's not just your elite head coaches or your mediocre head coaches. Everybody operates that way. It's going to be very vanilla, but I can't wait. I cannot wait to see guys like Deshaun Bishop and Dylan Sampson. More on that in just a second. Guys like these, my gosh, all of the young secondary guys and the second year guys on the defensive line, the linebackers. It's the first chance we get to lay our eyes on Nico Iamaleava in like an actual practice environment, even though it is a glorified scrimmage that it will be. It's just the first of so many times that we're going to get to see some of these players and what they can do, even in minimal chunks of what it'll be. It's like a hundredth of what a game environment might be like, even though it's good for them to be out in front of a bunch of fans and things like that on the playing field. Last year we didn't have the luxury of having a spring game or even having fans in the stadium because of all the wonderful like home run level upgrades that were made to Neyland Stadium that were ongoing. So it's going to be great to be there. One other thing before I talk about Deshaun Bishop's making his name, making waves, and obviously Dylan Sampson. We have big expectations for that young man and so many others. It's spring practice. It's not fall practice. We don't have a game next week or in 2 weeks. It's still months away, which sucks, but it'll be here before we know it. But you've got the luxury of you got your guys like Jabari Small and Jalen Wright. They're perfect examples. They've certainly had nicks here and there along their careers in this spring. You got your Cooper Mays and guys like that have been nicked up that don't have to rush back because of so many reasons, because of the nature of the spring game, because there's so long until we play meaningful football, even though the practice and the reps do matter. It's so long still to the season. You know what you're going to get from those guys. So you get the luxury in spring of if Cooper Mays goes down in a game, God forbid, if Jabari Small continues to have nagging injuries, if Jalen Wright, he was limited in camp last year leading up to the season, if those things happen, you get to see what your guys behind them have. And we do this every year. This sport is such a crazy whirlwind of a cycle, and it's obviously changing, but a lot of these things stay the same. So I'm very excited to see those guys that will get their chance much earlier than they might have, normally gotten the chance to be up the depth chart instead of at the back of it. Very excited to see those things. Almost expect kind of jump sides of the football to kind of jump to another position of a lot of intrigue with as many guys as Tennessee brought in. You can really say just at corner, but in the secondary, it's going to be so fun to watch that battle out. And, not only for 2023, but I mean, these guys should really be able to bring consistency to a position that has lacked it. And that's not just for the Heupel era. That's not just for the last 4 or 5 years. That's going back a little ways. I mean, I don't know when you would classify the best last corner play that we had. The defense had its moments. The defense has its moments in every season. So they can really bring consistency though with this group, I think. So I'm super excited to see those young corners, and I don't even know which one to have the highest expectations for, because they're all getting a little buzz here and there, and you've certainly got veterans that they'll have to beat out. And I think it would be nothing but a good sign to see if that were to happen here or there. I think if there's a chance for a true freshman to really get in, it's got to be at corner. Certainly transfers will factor in, Gabe Jeudy-Lally. You would certainly, I mean, like, if Virginia week rolls around and that guy's not starting, like, almost just from hearing him speak, not only from what he may do receiving coaching, giving coaching to young guys, and then actually showing it in reps on the field, I will be stunned. I mean, stunned. You've got, again, great things happening, like Danico Slaughter settling in at corner. That's only good for that position, I think, because I think his instincts are just right up there with the best of the best that we have available in Knoxville. You've got other good things like a veteran Jalen McCullough there, even though he may lack some of the athleticism that you really, really need. Just a veteran communicator, a veteran leader, should be nothing short of really good for this defense. You've got Christian Charles moving back to that position. We love Christian Charles on this program. And I think him moving back to safety is great for Tennessee. It's great for Christian. It's just great for the competition in that secondary, because, I certainly don't know that he's a true corner, but I mean, you want a guy like that on the field. You want him battling and either taking the job or pushing the guy that has the job. And I think that's the best position for him to do it at. You've got your Turrentines, you got your Wesley Walkers, and that's just guys that are in their second years at Tennessee, not as college athletes and things like that in Turrentine and Walker. It's just going to be so exciting. The offensive line, getting to see, if Cooper Mays doesn't play Saturday, if he doesn't practice Saturday, who's it going to be at center? Who's going to be, at that point, your second best center? Because it's been Jerome Carvin for a number of years that could play center if something did happen to Cooper. And Carvin, just the utility guy that he was. My goodness, it's him and Darnell. What, to bring back at least 3 starting positions, guys that have started on your offensive line, even though you've got more than that, because you had 2 guys play at left tackle, and things like that happen at positions for the team, are just huge. But still, to lose 2 and for them to be Jerome Carvin, who is as trusty as you can get, and Darnell Wright as he's creeping into top 10s of draft boards, as he would probably be pushing the quarterbacks for the top spots if he played primarily left tackle. We know he did that here in 2021. He certainly flourished at right tackle, but to replace those guys, who's it going to be? Will it be the guys in the transfer portal? Will it be young guys? Will it be guys that may have been here for 3 or 4 years that just haven't had their chance yet? They haven't been able to beat out those Carvins and those Darnells and even your Mincies and your Crawfords or Javonte Spragginses that haven't beat those guys out. Who's it going to be at left guard? Who's it going to be at left and right tackle? I mean, seriously, what's the mix going to look like? Who's behind Cooper? I mean, if there's anybody that should be like really, really practicing and playing for their job when we get there, it's going to be those running backs, Jabari, Jalen. They can't afford to slip up. They can't afford to put the ball on the ground, miss a block for the quarterback, because there's going to be young guys just right there nibbling at their heels and just ready to take over if they slip up. The receiver battle is going to be phenomenal. I mean, you bring back a guy that's, as like as trusty as Carvin was along the offensive line, and as versatile and as much of a utility guy as he could be. He held down the guard spot, but like as many places as you could use him, it seems like you can do that with Dante Thornton, inside or outside, slot or outside. You still bring back a guy that's so trusty. That's what I was actually getting at, was Keaton making the clutch catches that he did. It's like, if he might have one catch in a game, he didn't often have just one catch in a game, but if he did, it was going to be something that you had to have. That's the guy that he kind of was last year when, if Hyatt wasn't getting it done in a particular moment, or if we needed this, like a throw over the middle, like we did against Alabama, or the throw that really changed momentum and set momentum against Florida. I mean, guys like that battling it out for playing time, is these are exciting battles that we have not had. The depth chart, which, let's be real. I think I alluded to it, or maybe even said it. All these coaches just feel like they're being spot on, and man, everybody's trying to learn our tricks and secrets, and that's the truth of it. It is, people say it, and it's so true that it's copycat game. Every sport, really, at its highest level, is that. Now, it's one thing to copycat our offense. Tennessee's with Heupel and with Golish and Hosley. I mean, that's one thing to copycat, but still, concepts and things, they're all tight-lipped about it. Depth chart certainly falls into that category where it's like, we're not going to tell you who it is, so don't ask, things like that. When whoever it is, like if I have to wait until the first offensive and defensive drives of the Virginia game in the fall to see who it is, I am on pins and needles in a way that I haven't been in a lot of years. I mean, I was texting my uncle about the running back position specifically because, you like what Jabari does when he makes a guy miss an open field, and you like what you see from Wright and Sampson when they do leave guys settling. Now, it was against Vanderbilt and Clemson for Wright, and he did it against Vanderbilt as well. So you want to see it more often. You certainly need to see it more often. You need consistency. You need to be able to take the top off in not only the deep ball or the pass game, but also with the running game. But again, there's guys just creeping and just waiting. The young guys are just right there waiting. We know we've got capable players, and I have hardly even mentioned Nico yet. I mean, I expect good things from Joe. The last consistent football that we saw from Joe in Vanderbilt and the Orange Bowl was the best that we saw from him consistently. When you take out, your throws against Missouri and UT Martin and things like that, when the games were over, talking about playing entire games, we're seeing Joe play his best ball, and God willing, he'll have that pressure on him to be that guy in the good way that drives him and pushes him until it is Nico's turn, whenever it is. And it's in our best interest. We've said it, I'm sure, before, for Nico to redshirt if he can, for him to be that Joe Milton to Hendon Hooker that he's talked about being. Those things are great culture signs, and that's what we need to see. We don't need him out here, taking a job against Virginia or week 2 or 3, unless he just truly is the truth. I mean, that's just what it is. But again, the position battles are going to be so fun to watch, even in a spring game, in just a way that we've been waiting for. It's I will say it's not Georgia competition. It's not what Alabama's been. It's not 5 stars or third string or anything like that. But it's going to be so fun because really the stars are behind them now. Like, yeah, you've got the talent. You may have more. You may be able to do it at more athletic things at a bigger size or this or that. But like, the stars are over. It's you're no longer a high school recruit. It's time to put it up on the field and on the practice field that we don't get to see. So it's those battles that are going to be so exciting to play out, even in, and as meaningless as a spring game can be. It's going to be so fun. I think I mentioned this as well, but I mean, just again, taking in all of these things on the 6-month anniversary of beating Alabama for the first time in so long it's going to be an immaculate vibe. It's going to be as good of a spring game vibe as I can remember. And I've been to a handful of these over the years, been blessed to be able to do that, and blessed to be able to do it again and to do it with my buddy that you guys love as well, Mr. Dan Tucker. So I can't wait to do that, and to do it on such a special day as that anniversary of the Alabama win. So it's going to be very fun. Again, depth chart, I'm going to be on pins and needles until I see how the depth shakes out. It's going to be so fun for the first time in a really, really long time. Really, really long time. Want to transition. I've alluded to it a little bit. I've certainly said their names: Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Darnell Wright. I've talked about him a little bit. Now I'm going to talk about some draft stuff that I just want to get off my chest and also celebrate. I've got a little bit of a rant when it comes to Hendo. Not going to try to go over the top or anything with it, but just I don't, even though like I expected for Hendon to be dubbed. If I'm talking about like before he got hurt, before he really like rose to like pushing for the Heisman lead before his injury, I could just feel it. The draft was not going to be remarkable for Hendon. That was in my gut. Like this is me recalling this and just trying to be as honest as I can. Like just recalling and thinking, he's amazing and he's doing amazing things when we've been so starved for them. But I've seen this play out for guys not at Tennessee, obviously, but guys like Oklahoma State quarterbacks or many Ohio State quarterbacks, or even guys in the SEC that have done it in quote unquote gimmicky ways or have been dubbed that fairly or unfairly. I could just feel it coming for Hendon. So on one hand, let's celebrate, and obviously we will. Obviously, the first round of the NFL draft is going to be as fun as it's been since certainly we were waiting on Derek Barnett's name to be called and Alvin Kamara and Josh Dobbs and those wonderful receivers like Jawan and Callaway and some of those guys. Not that they were pushing for first round picks other than Barnett, but to hear Hendo creep into the first round of mock drafts, to hear him get more buzz, let's celebrate that. But I'm just going to ask what you would have him do, what more you would have him do. Why, like when it comes to mock drafting quarterbacks or evaluating them, I'll just never understand why it is how they're built, their archetype as a potential quarterback in the league. I'll never understand why it's those things over your actual film, the type of pass that you throw, and let's also recognize that Hendon doesn't have these mechanical hangups that other again, quote unquote gimmick labeled guys might have. He doesn't have those. He throws the ball well mechanically. He's got a laser of an arm that we don't even really think about too often because of what Joe can do. And it's not like we were waiting in the wings for Joe to take Hendo's job or anything like that. It's just we know that Joe can throw it to the Middle East if he wanted to. I mean, he really can. But again, why is it the build? This guy looks like Josh Allen. This guy, I read this today from a PFF guy. Anthony Richardson is the most athletic quarterback that we've ever seen enter the league. In approximately like half a brain cell or 5 seconds or 10, certainly. I mean, he is not the most athletic quarterback we've ever seen enter the league. He's one of those guys that is very athletic, has a great frame. He's a huge guy. Why aren't we looking at the film, the decision-making, the turnovers, the win-loss record? Why are we not looking at those things? Let's flip it on the other side of the spectrum. Let's talk about Bryce and CJ. I mean, again, talking about the Alabama game, being there, the 6-month anniversary, what Bryce Young did on the field against Tennessee, not that we had the defense of Georgia when he went up against them in 2021, not that we had that defense, but the plays that he were making, just unreal. He did it against most everyone. This year, he did it with less receiver talent than he'd had earlier in his career with Jameson Williams and John Mechie. And, I mean, just the ridiculous receivers that Alabama's had up until 2022 when it fell off a little bit. Even the offensive line fell off a little bit in 2022 for Alabama. I mean, they even had 2 losses for the first time in a long time. But still, the plays that Bryce made consistently against, and I'm not even wearing SEC glasses or a bias or anything when I say this, but just, against the guys who are going to be playing more so than other conferences historically in the NFL. Not a knock, just calling it how it's been when the draft time comes around. CJ Stroud, I would be asking more, like, why is the buzz there when the competition level kind of was what it was, but that Georgia game was phenomenal. They certainly didn't lose that game based off of his mistakes or his inability to make plays. He was phenomenal. And if it wasn't for games, like even a single game, like you can certainly look at the Utah Rose Bowl the year before, but if it wasn't for those things, I would really, really, really have questions about a CJ Stroud. But I mean, why are none of those things? The only knock that you hear about Bryce is his size. There are short quarterbacks in the league. There's skinny quarterbacks in the league. I mean, Russell Wilson's short. Kyler Murray is he's gosh, he's so short. He really is like a shortstop. I know he's a baseball player, and I know that's a little biased, obviously, and frankly, his career has not turned out the way that you would want it to for such a high pick. But I mean, there are small quarterbacks that succeed in the league. I don't care about the size as much as what I've seen you do. And I'm talking to really the top five here: Hendon, Levis, Richardson, and of course, Bryce and CJ. The questions are just not even. And I'm certainly not speaking from like a race area. Like, I mean, Bryce and CJ aren't your old school pocket passing, you know what I mean? Like they're not those guys. So I don't think it's that. I just don't know what it is. It's a half of the field read, one read. Again, what would you have him do if it is so open? If you have a guy like Hyatt, and not all of these gimmick offenses, again, to label it with air quotes, they don't all have, they rarely ever do have a Hyatt. Yeah, they may have an immediate bubble screen where an athletic dude just takes it to the house, or they make those plays for a quarterback. But what would you have him do other than throw as few as 2 interceptions, 3 the year before, in a system that he spent 2 years in exactly? What would you have him do? I'm almost speechless for it. So needed to get that off my chest. I hope that the buzz surrounding Hendon of him creeping into the first round is legit. I hope that a team uses that pick on him, because not only, I mean, of course we're biased when it comes to Hendon Hooker, but the dude is what you want your leader to be. And I think it will translate better to the league because he is an older guy. He's not some young, hot shot, cocky. He's certainly not cocky anyway. I mean, he lets his game do the talking. But don't you think that he would relate a little bit to your locker room being an older guy? Having done it on the field against the toughest competition in the land, I mean, don't you think that would translate a little bit better to your locker room? These, again, just things I had to get off my chest. I'll be excited. I mean, Hendon could slip, and I would be elated for him. I certainly hope the first round buzz is legit. I think there are so many teams, and Dan and I will be talking about this, or we'll be both hitting you solo if we have to talk about the draft and where we see these balls going, where we'd love to see them go, things like that. But we're going to give that to you. But there's just so many teams where I think Hendon could succeed, especially if they would, build around him with offensive line and receiving targets and a good solid backfield to go with him. I just think there's so many places he could succeed based on the guys that we've seen do it in the league over the last 10 to 15 years. The game really has changed a lot. It's been fun. I think it's been needed. The offensive game is certainly more pleasant to the eyes unless you are just an old school football purist. So I think it's been pleasant to the eyes. And obviously, we wish nothing but the best to him, and I hope that first round buzz is real. Somebody pulled the trigger. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I don't think he would be the reason your program doesn't succeed, your organization for the league purposes. I think he just needs a few pieces of a solid team around him, like any quarterback would need, and I think he can take you almost as far as you want to go. I really do. And again, there's obviously some Tennessee bias for us in that, but there's just not a lot of holes in the man's game. Certainly, he's going to be able to play for 10 years. The game has done nothing but get a little bit safer for the quarterback. Certainly, if you reach superstar status, you're going to be protected. I mean, you may get breathed on and get a 15-yard penalty for your team. That should be attractive as well. And let's not. I haven't even hardly mentioned his athleticism, the factor that his legs, keeping plays alive, will be when he's back to health after this injury, which he's going to be very close to around the start of the season. Very exciting, very exciting. Cannot wait to see where he goes. I haven't bought an NFL jersey. I didn't even buy a Peyton Manning or an Eric Berry jersey, but it's going to get real dicey on Michael breaking down and buying a jersey when Hendo's name gets called, and especially if his career takes off the way that it really could. It feels like things have cooled off a bit for Jalin Hyatt, for Cedric Tillman. Like, again, not going to go full draft preview, but it feels like it's cooled off a little bit for Hyatt. And certainly, Tillman, he had such an unfortunate year for him with the injury and just the time that he did have to miss. It just seems like they've fallen a little bit, but I would say that neither are available midway through the third round. And Hyatt, if he slips out of the second, that would probably be astonishing to me, just with the potential of his speed. Darnell Wright, it would be shocking at this point if he's not gone by pick 15 of the first round, if he's not the first Tennessee Vols selected, unless someone really, really high up the board falls in love with Hendo, it's going to be Darnell. And even stories, if I've said this already, I'm sorry, but even stories like Darnell, where had all the potential in the world coming in, super, super excited when he signed with you, and it just wasn't there for a couple years. Flirts with leaving when the coaching change happens. Plays left tackle, does a fine job there, and then explodes on the right side of the field, on the right side, on the right tackle position. He just flourishes. I mean, if he was a left tackle again, he would really, really, really be pushing those quarterbacks for a top 3, top 5 spot, I think. So, going to be vastly excited to watch those guys. Byron Young, going to be rooting for him as well. Big time, love that story. Jerome Carvin, I just again, if you let him slip to a certain point, I just think that's on you as an organization. If you have needs along the interior of your offensive line, if you need a guard, if you need a center, I just think you're mistaken. It's not, he's not Trey Smith. I'm not saying that, but he's very solid. I think he'll be a fine professional football player. And not, I mean, I've just been so excited this whole podcast, but going to be tuned into the draft in the ways I've not been lately, and we all will. That should be celebrated, and we're certainly going to do that. We're jacked for it. So, going to wrap this thing up. Going to give a quick unprompted shout out to my man J-Dub Creates. For if you're watching the video, you need to check it out. Just for this glorious hat that I've got on, birthday gift from the man J-Dub Creates, JW Josh Wilhelm. He gave us that beautiful Orange Cast logo, which you'll be seeing accompanied with this episode of the pod. If you're listening to this, just fast forward or just check it out. Check out this hat. The man knows how to give. He gave us a beautiful logo. He gave me this beautiful hat. He's the man. And that is J-Dub Creates on Instagram, or for the website purposes, jwcreates.com. For any of your logos, graphic design, if you need a website, he's your man. We're so thankful for him. So thankful for you guys checking us out. Even if, if we had 0 listeners, I think we'd still get on here just because we need to vent sometimes. We want to give our opinions. We're so thankful that you guys check them out. I wish there was I want to meet as many people as I can on Saturday, and not just be in and out of the place. It's going to be so much fun. Just praying for good weather, for good health, no injuries in the spring game, and just to go in there and soak up all the sights and sounds that the place has to offer and that the team is sure to provide based on what we've got coming back. So, love you guys. Thank you so much. Just want to say God bless, and GBO, thanks for checking it out.